Oh my God. Alrighty then. The 2020 Corolla XSE Hatchback. Now, Mark and I have already done 2 videos, respectively, on the sedan and hatch. However, those vehicles were equipped with the CVT. This has 3 pedals and a manual. And it's not hyperbole when I say it completely transforms the buying experience of this vehicle. You have a different target demographic. It turns this car from a total appliance to a fun pseudo hot hatch. Now, if you're the man or woman who's buying this vehicle, you're probably going to be using it as a commuter or family vehicle of some sort. And the important bits in this vehicle are all covered. You have great seats. You can be Mark-sized, meaning a dwarf, or built like me, a elderly, overweight silverback gorilla, and still be very comfortable. The cabin itself is incredibly quiet. It's built much like a premium car of yesteryear. The dash itself is all leather. There's a nice use of hard plastics, soft touch materials. All of the touch points like the steering wheel shifter, center console area are all great. It's actually a surprisingly impressive cabin, particularly for $23,000. So with that said, let's talk about the electronics in this cabin. Now, if you've been in any current generation Toyota product, you'll feel right at home. It has the same screen you get in a RAV4, meaning it has all of the pros and cons of that unit as well. It is fairly low resolution, yet Apple CarPlay works great. All the controls are physical, and it's fairly easy to navigate. Now, the other thing to bring up is the speakers in this cabin. So in the sedan, you get more options. The XSE in the automatic sedan can get a JBL sound system and a wireless charging pad. You can get neither of those options in this car. I believe Toyota's belief is that the average buyer of an enthusiast hatch is probably going to opt for their own component set. And it's probably necessary if you're going to spend a lot of time in this cabin, but the stock system is far from terrible. It's actually a lot better than what you'd get in a Chevy Equinox, which that sound system haunts my dreams to this day. Before we get into the rear, let's talk about some of the negatives of this cabin, and there are only 2. The first being the interior color. Now, if you want this blue, which is fairly striking, you are saddled with this white interior. The white mixed with some of the glossy black plastics, I'm positive, despite your best efforts, this cabin's gonna look like an outhouse. It already is getting dirty at 600 miles. The other thing to bring up is the dash. While most of it is leather covered, this small portion here sticks out and it is super hard. So if you are a shorter person and you get in and out of this vehicle, you are inevitably going to blast your knee on it. In fact, when Mark did the original Corolla video, he hit his knees so hard on the dash, he bruised his bone. Well, we've made it to the rear of this Japanese-built wonder, and let me tell you, it does not take the great Sherlock Holmes to realize a full-size adult will not fit back here. And if you look at the hatch area, due to the very high load floor, it's not the most practical automobile in this segment. In comparison, the Civic is far larger. Now, yes, the reason behind this, let's call it sacrifice, is due to the suspension design. They went with a multi-link versus a torsion beam, which due to packaging impedes on a lot of the usability of this vehicle. So look, I, like Mark, agree that CUVs are the work of the devil. However, this vehicle, if you are going to use it as a traditional family sedan or hatch, is going to struggle. So with that said, let's head to the shop. You are looking at the Toyota Corolla Hatchback on the Benpack lift. This is the manual transmission version, and this is the version that many people get far more excited about, despite the fact that the sales show that more people buy the CVT. Now, I've already had this car on the lift, the previous car I did, and the difference between the two, when you look at it, there is no difference. It looks identical. So I'm not going to cover everything that I did before. Now, there are a few things to talk about. One, this is on Toyota's new architecture, TNGA. So what you will see is what you see on all their cars, like the Camry, the Avalon. They have a great use of covering NVH materials to reduce road noise. You have aerodynamic pieces like wheel spats and all that to smooth out airflow for better fuel efficiency. And this is why this car feels far more refined than the previous generations did. It's all about making the car feel more substantial than it really is, less trying to shed that image of being that cheap, compact car. The main thing to talk about in the rear is the multi-link. The multi-link suspension, this independent rear suspension, has been disappearing off of compact cars now.
Vehicles like the Mazda 3 have lost it. Certain Hyundai products that compete with this have lost it. And the main reason is internal costs of engineering to do it right and costs of manufacturing. Now, Toyota's a big company, so they have the resources to do this right and provide better driving dynamics. So when you have all these links, you have to take into account for toe change, under compression, and lateral load. You have to take in camber change and all the adjusters and the adjustments that are available with it. Also, you have to take in account packaging. And in the case of a multi-link and a smaller car, it takes up more room. And that's just the sad truth of it. So you're trading off some of the packaging and cargo capacity for having a better suspension or a better ride. So they've kept it here. So that's the huge draw of the Corolla. It handles and feels great and rides well, but you're losing some of the cargo volume. So when you look at a Mazda 3, and this is the big discussion, they did it for cost and packaging while sacrificing some of the overall dynamics, where this is going the other way. So when we do the drive, we're going to talk about why it feels a little bit better and kind of the capabilities of it. So let's get it out on the road. Ooh, yeah. I haven't driven a manual transmission in about 50 years.
Speaking of manuals, this manual in this 2020 Corolla XSE hatch is superb.
It's pretty good.
It completely, and I don't mean this in hyperbole, I really do think it transforms this car from appliance, a good appliance, to something you actually enjoy driving.
So I drove the original Corolla XSE, and people are like, why didn't you drive the manual? Well, because we didn't get the manual, I got the automatic. So,
and then we got the sedan, which was also the automatic.
And there's nothing wrong with the automatic, considering almost everybody's going to buy that anyway. But for a car like this, that has this look, that has this style, and I said this a long time ago, back when I was a younger gentleman, 4 cylinders were always more exciting to drive when they were manual because it felt more connected. You could rev it out, you can do things to it that the automatic wouldn't, and it just somewhat sounds and feels better to me. I don't know what it is.
This motor does not sound amazing, particularly when it's tied to a CVT, but when you can ring it out yourself, it does make for a far more enjoyable experience. And let me get on my soapbox for a second.
Okay.
There is no reason to buy the automatic in this car because it has the, what is it called, IMT feature, which basically drives the manual for you. It rev matches downshifts, and it matches your upshifts as well. So if you have a questionable manual driving ability, it does it for you.
Which I just turned it off, by the way, because I'm so professional, Jack.
Ooh, those shifts, you're like Ayrton Senna.
It revs out to fuel cutoffs at about 6,800 RPM, so it does wind out pretty well compared to most modern 4-cylinders. And the best part, Jack, no turbo here.
Yeah, it is naturally aspirated, much like the Mazda 3, to be fair. And it has no reliability problems, unlike the Honda Civic, which is a faster, more powerful engine, but that comes with the benefit of added oil dilution.
And all the other weird stuff that's going on there. But I don't know that this is... So if we're talking new versus new, the Civic, like the SI, or even the Civic Sport, yeah, is definitely more entertaining to drive. And if you go to the SI, which really isn't that much more than this, you get a limited slip differential.
But you lose a hatch.
You lose the hatch, that's correct. So let's talk about the way that this rides. I'll put it simply, it rides amazing. It rides so good that you would never guess that you're in a compact car. And this is where, you know, we talk about older, fun compact cars from the earlier days to now. This is so refined, it's so quiet, it's almost troubling.
No, it's really, even the interior, which I know we talked about a little earlier, it is so much more impressive than what you would expect from a Corolla, right? It really does feel like a nice cabin.
Oh, it does. There's not enough power to overwhelm the car.
No, it's impressive.
So you can push it through corners, and you can pretty much go flat out, and this is one of the benefits of lower horsepower machines. You feel with the manual transmission, with the way this car's set up, you always feel like you're going way faster than you really are. And that's one of the most enjoyable parts about driving this. Now I'm going to come to a stop. I'm going to rip it off the line and just let you experience the motor. It's definitely not fast. It's just quick enough to be completely entertaining on a daily drive every day.
Yeah, this is not going to set your world on fire, but because it is, let's call it slower, you can drive this like a total yabo everywhere. And that's what we've been doing.
Yeah, and I miss doing that. I totally miss just being able to pound a car around without any regard for worrying about speed limits, without regard for worrying how much fuel I'm burning up and how often I'm going to have to fill it up. And the best part is, I know that I'm not going to have this in the shop.
Yeah, it is. If you're going to keep this car for a long, long time, which is probably what you should be doing if you're buying a, let's call it a more disposable automobile like this, you shouldn't have to worry about anything. But if you're buying this as an enthusiast, let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah, so as an enthusiast car, this is not that. This is a vehicle that you're going to buy with it's got just a sprinkle of fun to it, a sprinkle of sport, but it's too refined to be a sporty car. It's too soft. There's a lot of pitch when you brake. There's a lot of nosedive. The brakes are too sensitive. Like, it's basically all or nothing brake pedal. So there's no progression. I literally pushed down about 35 to 40% there, but because of how quick I stab the pedal, the system just automatically loads up the brakes and goes full lock. There's a lot of things that are not here from like that performance car that you would want. But again, I wouldn't be buying this, and I don't think most people would be buying it to go up and tear up an autocross or track days. You would have to go up market for that type of experience.
That said though, Speed Academy, our Canadian cousins,
Which, by the way, Speed Academy, I'm wearing all their gear today.
Did a build series on one of these. And at the very end, they had one of their fans, who's also an owner of a Corolla hatch, compare the two. So if you did, basically the conclusion of that video, sorry for ruining it, is if you do light modifications, you use some coilovers, you do an exhaust, some wheels, real tires, it adds to the fun of this vehicle without entirely ruining it. No, it's not a GTI replacement or a Civic Type R or an SI, but if you are looking to have a little bit of fun, being a lower insurance group, which this offers over those cars, there's a lot to offer in this platform.
And that's a great time to head into the final thoughts. I'm tickled pink here, Jack. Final thoughts on the Toyota Corolla hatchback with a manual transmission. The conclusion, the manual is far more fun than the CVT. Wow, can you believe that? Well, not everybody can drive manual, and that's the issue, and people don't buy these in masses anymore. But they do give you some modern technology with it, like the IMT button that auto rev matches downshifts for people that don't have a ton of experience, and that makes it far more accessible. You combine that with the hill start assist, where it doesn't roll backwards, it doesn't freak people out. This is a great first manual transmission car to get into. Now, the manual trans isn't the most direct thing. It's cable operated, but it's way better than some of the previous Corolla manual transmissions they offered, or the Scion IM, where the linkage felt like a rubber band and the clutch take-up was so odd. They got rid of all of that here. This is a far more natural experience. The second huge pro is the body structure. The new generation Toyotas ride amazing. This is quiet, more refined, and like Jack said at the beginning, in some ways it feels more like a substantial mid-size luxury car from days past, and you're never gonna get beat up in here. And it's still somewhat fun to drive. It's not a sports car. But like the Speed Academy segment, which I'm wearing their gear right now, they did suspension, they did exhaust, they did some other things to it, and it can be made to be very fun to drive, but it's never gonna blow you away in terms of speed. It's perfectly adequate every day. The motor is port and direct injected. They have a great history of reliability with these things. You're never going to have an issue. Now, the only issue here really is the interior space in the back and in the hatch. When you compare it to the Civic, if you're a Honda fanboy or a Honda person in general, I can't argue it. The Civic hatch is far more usable. It handles very similarly. It's equally fun to drive in many ways, specifically with the sport trim and then of course the SI availability. So this loses ground to that. However, you gain some in reliability, and it doesn't have the strange and kind of youthful look to it as much. But that's where I'm going to leave this. Everything else I talked about in the previous Corolla hatchback video I've covered. Thanks for watching. See you next time.